I'm Dr. Bart Rademaker, and this is the Doctor's Guide podcast, raw and unfiltered. And once again, really excited to engaging my guests in role playing so that you can actually witness the process by which you can transform your life. Because here's the truth. There's so many podcasts out there and they're all espousing their products and they want to have you buy their stuff and also promoting themselves and how wonderful their diet is or whatever that is. And of course, many of them are really, really good. But even when they're really, really good, are they right for you? And that's where that discernment needs to come in. And so I've talked to so many people, and I don't know you personally, and I don't know your particular problems, but we'll get excited by a certain product or a certain thing to do or lifestyle change, and then find out we get no results. And so you're spending a lot of money, you get really frustrated with things, and you kind of give up. And I think that's the problem with many, many people out there. And so one thing that's common is the process by which we make better decisions. And so that's exactly what I want to share with you. So we're not promoting a product or hyper promoting a person. We're just sharing with you the process by which you can make the best intelligent decisions to optimize your health. And so how do we specifically do that? Through role playing. So I have one of my guests will present with a problem. My other guest will be the guide towards some sort of resolution in about 6 to 10 minutes. And clearly that's not a lot of time to resolve anything, but you'd be surprised how much can be resolved and the amount of breakthroughs that we've gotten through this process on this podcast. But the idea is that you get to see yourself in this situation. You get to witness yourself. You get to realize, you know what? I'm not the only one with this problem, and there is hope and there is clarity at the end of this. And then again, my hope is that you leave today with some sort of insight and some sort of action step that you can take. Perhaps it's even just connecting with my guests because they're amazing in themselves. The talent and the magic, that they can help you with is just incredible. And so that's also my purpose, that you get to find people that will absolutely help you. And here's the thing, we all deserve optimum wellness, optimum health. I mean, you don't want to wait till there's a crisis and you need a drug or you need a surgery. See, my vision of the future doctor out there is one that's not going to be prescribing drugs or performing surgeries, but there is a responsibility on your end. You got to take accountability for the decisions that you make. And here on this podcast, we help you make better decisions. So I'm excited to be inviting once again Daniel Martin to this podcast. Had a great podcast with him before. It was actually really impressive. I really enjoyed it. And as listeners, if you have issues with epilepsy, you better go check that one out. And thank you so much for joining me today, Kendra. So we'll have Daniel introduce himself first, and then we'll go with Kendra, and then we'll start the role playing for about 6 to 10 minutes, and then we'll unpack it as well. Daniel, a little bit about you.
Thank you so much. My name is Daniel Martin, and I'm the founder of naturalseizurecontrol.com, where I help people stop seizures naturally without more medications or more brain surgeries or anything else like that. So I've been doing this on myself since I was diagnosed with epilepsy at 10 years old and been on medications. And in my 20s, I figured out how to get off the medication, so I wasn't dealing with the side effects of extreme fatigue, social anxiety. I would have a mouth that would be twitching anytime I smiled or I was in a public place. And I would nap for 1 or 2 or 3 hours every day and still be exhausted. So I help people make that change. Sometimes it's as simple as diet. Sometimes it's a lot of rewiring the brain training, vagus nerve stimulation, all these things that we can do naturally before jumping straight into surgery and things that have permanent side effects. So that's exactly what I do full time, and I love every minute of it.
What's so remarkable about you, Daniel, is so much respect for you. And this is a shout out for all those pioneers that are discovering all these new ways to optimize health and wellness, is that you don't have a medical background, which is remarkable. And so you guys are actually leading the way to better solutions, oftentimes because it's an issue that you struggled with. The conventional in the medical field wasn't offering you solutions. And I'm not knocking against conventional medicine by any means, because, you know, I trained for 17 years and I've been a plastic and reconstructive surgeon for 25. And so, you know, it's a really important part of our life. But here's the truth. And there are other choices as well. And when we can make a choice without drugs, without surgery, I am all for it. And thank you for leading the way and being the light for many others that might stand in the space of fear, like, oh, I don't know if I should do this. But truthfully, if you know you're right, it's absolutely so important. Kendra, a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you. My name is Kendra Cannoy, and I have started the accelerated regeneration method to help active weekend warrior type people, whatever their sport might be, who have joint pain that is inhibiting them from continuing with that, heal that joint pain, much like Daniel, without the pills and shots and surgeries. And I have been on a 15-year journey. When I was about 30, I had a car accident that left me with a hip injury. And I suffered for 2 years with pain, and it ended my dance career at the time. And I discovered first a proper way to eat and to fuel myself. And then in the past 15 years, it has evolved into other lifestyle mindset ways and tools to really help, again, myself, and then now hundreds of other people heal their joint pain. So
And
that's
here, once again, here's the example. Somebody who was challenged with something, conventional medicine wasn't offering the solutions, and you found a way out, and now you want to teach others. By the way, that's the hero's journey, by the way. You know, from Joseph Campbell, a lot of people don't recognize the fact that the hero is the one that comes back and is a hero for two, and then sharing the wisdom, you know, with their communities. All right, so let's do the 6-minute role play. Daniel, I guess you got a problem, and Kendra will guide you.
Absolutely. So I got this problem with one of my knees, especially. But one day I was bending over gardening. I stood up and something just, I don't even know what exactly it was, but I immediately knew something was messed up. And I noticed that it's hard for me to even walk, let alone run or do anything when my left knee just is in constant pain with every step, and it'll just flare up for several days and it'll disappear. Chiropractors and my doctor not exactly sure, and things they've told me not helping. And I notice my flexibility is not great, like if I'm kneeling down or squatting or doing anything like that. So really I just want to figure out why I have so much pain, and that's my problem, and I could use your help with that, Kendra.
okay. So you weren't doing anything. I mean, gardening, that's a thing, but nothing that would seem to have that impact. Um, what activities were you doing prior to that? What is your passion that you like to do?
I don't. I played soccer as a kid, but more recently, I just go snowboarding a couple times a year, and I know I've taken a couple hard falls, so I don't know if that's related. But other than that, I don't run on a regular basis. I don't do anything on a regular basis, so it's a little confusing why this happened all of a sudden.
Yeah. What was happening in your life, kind of zooming out, not just gardening, but was there anything emotionally, a shift in a relationship, a shift in a job,
Hmm.
anything
So
significant you can
it
think
would have
of?
been it would have been high school. So maybe it was me being shameful for not even getting a date or going to prom. Maybe it was uh, I don't know, maybe me being too many video games. I was huge into playing Halo, every night, 3 hours or more. I remember staying up till 3 a.m. one time, you just endlessly doing that. It doesn't seem like anything's wrong with it at the time, but um, yeah, other than that, video games is the main kind of hobby that I have. And I didn't have any traumatic death or traumatic near death experience. So again, I'm not seeing any obvious factors there.
Right, right. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting the video games, which is becoming more and more and more prevalent. And even if it's not video games, right now it's social media, or even, you know, having video calls as part of our business and things that we do. It's still taking in a lot of that, you know, electromagnetic radiation and frequency that we are starting to learn more and more about. So, and what's interesting is that you were gardening at the time, and perhaps if you would have taken your shoes off, if you take your shoes off when you garden, although your hands are in the dirt, that's, you know, definitely a way to help balance that aspect out in your life. So, um, with the chiropractic and the other healing modalities, did you get any benefit from those?
No, I just got one chiropractic adjustment and I didn't really notice anything from it. So I figured it was a waste of money.
Yeah.
And I've tried a lot of other things. I can't say that I've stuck to them a long period of time. But yeah, I haven't seen any results from anything that I've tried so far.
Mm-hmm. And diet wise, do you have a guidelines that you follow with your diet, or
I
do you
try
have?
to eat well and make good choices, but I work at a cybersecurity job, so they vendors bring in Chick-fil-A or box of donuts or take us out to dinner where it's like appetizer things like nachos and fried things on a stick or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm really love free food, getting as much as humanly possible. So if there's a bag of chips left over on the counter, I'll finish them off. If there's you know, the rice and beans from the fajitas catering and that nobody wants, I'll take that and I'll eat it day after day until it's gone. So um, I love saving as much money as humanly possible on food, and I just eat whatever is available. I'm not big into cooking, so sometimes I love going to the Asian buffet because then I can load up on food and you know, have one meal a day and save a little bit of money by taking advantage of the buffet, you know, eating a lot at one time. So, but I don't eat, you know, constant Twinkies or donuts or anything like that, but I do take advantage of free food whenever I can.
Yes, and it's a challenge because I'm not a food waster. You know, it's important uh to not be throwing food away. However, making choices for our health, keeping that as a primary focus, that we eat to fuel our body, not just to save the wallet or to satisfy the taste buds that we were blessed with, that really enjoy all the wonderful, you know, sweet and salty things that we have access to. Even if, you know, if it's just rice and beans, you know. Uh, the um the interesting, you're making me think of, you know, the saving money, right? Eating with that intention of tailoring to your budget, right? I mean, you've been to the chiropractor, which probably wasn't so expensive, right? Maybe between 50 and $100 for that.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the people that I work with, you know, sometimes have had months and months or years and years of physical therapy, you know, paying for some things out of pocket beyond their insurance, whether it's co-pays on cortisone shots or this new PRP therapy, and I don't remember the plasma replacement.
Plasma-rich platelets.
Thank you. I knew you knew what it was. Thank you. And of course, joint replacements, right? That's like further down the line once people have really degraded their joint and having not taken care of themselves in any natural way. You know, if they've been relying on taking the pills or even having the joints adjusted. I'm a big fan of chiropractic. I've gone off and on my whole life, so I definitely think that there's a great service with that. But again, it's relying on an outside person to tweak and, you know, adjust our bones and our skeleton, when really, if we are taking in the foods that are going to nurture the healing. And I think more importantly, and this could be argued, but for me, it's about what you're not taking in. Yes, of course, it's great to eat from the rainbow and fruits and vegetables and healthy nutrients and that kind of thing too. But we have such a toxic burden in our life from, I mean, you mentioned Twinkies, which is kind of like our ultimate example of of the toxic food, but you go into the grocery store and there's tens of thousands of products in there that are not actually fueling our health. They are actually feeding disease and contributing to that toxic burden. So, that's something that I would work with you, Daniel, is figuring that out for you. What are the things that you might think that are fueling your body, but could actually instead be harming and causing that little tweak in the gardening area. And, while you were gardening, which was an acute inflammation situation, right? And that this was my experience. I learned that even though I was doing all of the physical therapy, stretches and exercise, I was actually working as a personal trainer at the time. So I had no excuse. I was in the gym, I was doing my things, I was doing everything that I was supposed to, but I was also eating like I was taught as a personal trainer. I had certifications as a specialist in performance nutrition, and I could tweak your macros and do all these things. And so I really had an ego around the food portion when it was introduced to me, because I thought this can't possibly become for my diet. I mean, I was leaner than I am now, so it wasn't like it was physically showing, but on the inside, it had then led to this pain, even though I was only 30 years old, which in a younger age, we should be able to recover quickly. But I was actually blocking my own healing by perpetuating these inflammatory foods. So that's definitely, something to take a look at. And it's actually where I start with most people, because yes, there are other toxins, and we've talked a little bit about EMFs and things, but medications being one of them. And I actually had a really big lesson with a recent client that I worked with. She did not necessarily 100% of my recommendations, but she made enough shifts that she should have experienced some change in her pain level. And, not being a doctor, or a pharmacist, I have to Google. If you give me a medication that you're taking, I have to Google it. I might not know what it's for in general. But I finally took her list of about 8 medications that she was taking, and I found that joint pain or muscle weakness was a side effect of every single one of them. Her antidepressant, her statin, her thyroid pill, every single one of it. And now it might have been more on the rare list, it might not have been one of the top 5 side effects. But I said, this is something that aside from, and I showed her, we Googled together, I showed her how to look it up. I got her prepared to go to her doctor. And I said, so you might want to talk to him about reducing or eliminating some of these, because this is probably what's blocking you. And she went to that doctor, and I did as much as I could to fortify her belief. And she said, oh, he didn't seem too concerned about that. And I said, well, did you push him a little bit and ask that you might want to? And she said, yeah, he just didn't say anything. And she's a 74-year-old woman that, adores her doctor and believes. And I just was like, well, I think we're a little bit at an impasse, which honestly hadn't happened. And I was trying to do as much as I could, but I wasn't being met in the middle. Yeah.
Well, let's wrap it up there. We went a little over time. Awesome. So thank you both. So Daniel, what was that for you?
It was an interesting, kind of talk about medication, because I've been taking I used to take medication starting at 10 years old. And it makes me wonder, like, hey, even though I didn't have immediate knee pain on the first dose of medication, like, could that have happened 5 years down the line, 20 years down the line. So I love hearing that perspective, and reflecting on my life. The role play was kind of reflective of me 10 years ago when I really was all into free food, and reflecting on that, hey, was that really food? Was that really free, or am I paying for it just down the line? So it was really helpful and powerful to kind of have those pieces in a very relaxed, plain, straightforward way, where sometimes it's overcomplicated, it just goes over your head and you throw it away mentally. So it was great.
Which happens too often. Kendra, what was that for you?
That was great. I mean, it took me a second to get in the flow there of not wanting to continue interviewing him, because that's not about that. So, but that's typically what I do is, dive really into someone else's story so that I can pinpoint what's happening. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. I think.
Well, it is the story that we always need to uncover. And there's a beautiful term that I learned from Sean Callaghy. He's the blind attorney. He's got this great program out there, and it's the loving pursuit of the truth. And so oftentimes we get, wrapped up, entangled, with, okay, do I want to share the truth? Am I going to be embarrassed? Am I going to be shamed? All these things. And and the truth is so relevant to the choices that we make. You talk about free food, I'm a foodie and I love food and I'll eat whatever's out there. I'm making better choices today, but the truth is it probably comes from a time of scarcity. And my parents grew up during the Second World War, and they had a potato every day to share. They had one egg per week. They had one piece of meat per week. And so genetically, I'm sure that kind of transferred to me somehow, that, I still live in somewhat of that scarcity, and we make our choices based on that. And so I love, the question that you referred to. And if the listener didn't catch up on that, but, our emotions have a lot to do with what the choices that we make. And my guess, Kendra, is that you work with people based on that. Obviously, we didn't dive in here today so much, but it's so true. And to ignore that is also to only get, half the solution. And that's what's unfortunate about, conventional medicine. It's strictly, drugs and surgery, and had a very important place, up till maybe 5 years ago. And I say that because now we've got so much new technology that tells us differently. And so for my colleagues out there, it's time that we kind of reimagine the business of medicine and understand, whoa, there's so much outside of what we learned in medicine that's actually going to really support our patients. Conventional medicine really, for those emergencies and those critical situations. But we all can win. We all can win by working together with people like yourself, Kendra, like people like yourself, Daniel, who've got a talent and skill set to see things differently. And why not? Why not do that first? So I talked a little bit longer than usual, but I'm handing over the mic to you guys. And what else do you want the listener to know? This is the time that we get to unpack what we just talked about. What else would either of you like to share in regards to the work that you do, how you do it, and this example?
I think that the emotional impact is something when I started to learn the diet and was basically just desperate to get out of pain with my hip, I started the diet the same week that I left my ex-husband. And I, was out of pain within 30, 45 days. And so then it became, is it the diet or was it the husband? And they're now learning. I'm not an expert on, somatic things of how they go in the body, but I know that relationships and trauma are held in people's hips. And from a health coaching business perspective, I thought, well, I'm just going to focus on the food because that's something easy to, tangible 3D that I can easily do. But in the 15 years since, that is where the mind portion and the emotions and how things are affecting us, which is why I ask what was happening in your life while you were out gardening or riding that bike and falling off or something, because a lot of times there is something that is pretty easy, even from not an expert in that field necessarily, but helping people connect their own dots to that. And that has been an exciting exploration and generates a lot of ahas for people.
Yeah, I love that. And truthfully, it's unfortunately not in the scope of your general practitioner, simply because they've dedicated all the time to the science of medicine and physiology and disease. And to have that part is super tricky, also because of liability issues and regulatory issues and all that kind of stuff. But the truth is that what you're spot on the truth of that, and that our emotions will cause all sorts of things, imbalances in the body. One thing I also wanted to share is that diet also results in inflammation, and you start having inflammation, then yeah, all sorts of problems happen. Daniel, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I would just add on that even though I'm not specialized in joint pain, stress is a primary trigger / cause for seizures and epilepsy. And there's a specific type of seizure that they don't really know how to categorize. So it's called psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. And there's countless types and subcategories of seizures, and they all present differently in every person, and they all manifest in different ways. And sometimes there's clues leading up to them, sometimes there's not, sometimes there's randomness, sometimes there's not. But stress is that weird thing that is so complicated because it's this summation of our mind, body, spiritual beingness that somebody can react to the death of a grandparent with stress, and some can respond to the same stimulus with a completely different reaction. So stress, we might be in a car accident. It might seem like sometimes we have an automatic reaction, and yeah, we can't change the automatic reaction, but we can change our everyday perception and reaction to life. This is where the brain training comes in that I help people with, because stress is so foundational for every single disease in the body that we need to really take it seriously when somebody says, hey, is there anything stressful going on in your life? Because I know from personal experience, I felt like a non-stressed person. I felt like nothing in my life was going wrong. I felt like chill and everything like that. But there's subconscious stress, things going on under the surface you don't realize, like you said, Bart, about like, hey, my parents, grew up a certain way, eating a certain amount of food. And that absolutely can and does transfer over, whether it's in our cells, our genetics, DNA, our vibration, or just from being raised, by society and our parents. We just get trained a certain way. And then we have that subconscious stress, guilt, shame, whatever it is that helps drive that disease. So sometimes it really is a root cause, even if you're a guy like me, the calmest person on the planet.
Yeah, and you always have to wonder with the senior CEO of a company, has his 5-year-old temper tantrum during a meeting. I mean, where did that even come from? And the truth is that we downloaded all these programming as a child, and probably even before we were born or even conceived, and it gets to show up. And so it's very, very relevant, to our world today. And the emotions is the language of the body, and our thoughts is the language of our brain. And unless we connect that, unless we explore it, and the truth of the matter is that we have to give ourselves permission to be human, and with our faults and our weaknesses, and they're going to show up. And unless we are ready to have the courage and vulnerability to have a conversation with somebody else and not be shamed by it, oftentimes, no matter what kind of drug you're going to use, which by the way we don't want to use, but whatever form of therapy you want to use or treatments, it may not work. More thoughts from you, Kendra?
Well, I was just thinking about what you said about my scope. We all each have an individual scope based on our background, our education, our experience, and this is why I had to stop myself because of the format of this program from not asking too many questions about Daniel. But that's part of what I've learned to do, is to explore And it can feel a little bit forward. If someone's here on the phone to talk to me about knee pain and I want to ask them what kind of childhood trauma they had, sometimes they're not prepared for that. And I had a recent call with a guy who had rheumatoid arthritis for the past 30 years and really suffers. And, I had nudged on it, but he said, "Oh yeah, my father was shot in front of me when I was 16 years old." And that's where it's like, for me, it's like probably something there, and he's been through things, but as far as it's settling and manifesting in his body, and that's where losing a job, having a little financial hardship, those kind of things, I feel more comfortable in my scope. But that kind of trauma, definitely, it's important to have a network, which is why I like this platform here again, because you're bringing together a bunch of health practitioners in different styles. It's like, ooh, I know somebody else that can really specialize and help you better than I can.
Well, it's
So
also about having the real conversation. I mean, I think whatever conversation that is, when you come from integrity, and anything is game, because the from an integrous space, you're authentically there to support and help someone navigate through this process. And at the end of the day, everybody's responsible, accountable for themselves, whether they choose to want to believe something or not, choose to be a victim or a sufferer or not. It's entirely up to them. But that's, where we can begin that conversation. That's the purpose of this podcast, to recognize, okay, let's have the conversation that nobody else is having. And so this is the truth. This is what's happening. And it's all about finding the right person. And I totally agree. I mean, we need to collaborate, with each other, and no doctor, no coach, no epilepsy. I have to call you a nerd because you are a nerd. Is going to know everything, right? And I purposely chose not to try to learn the most of anything. I just want to be really masterful on everything, and then refer out to the right person. So that's the purpose of collaborating and being a guide. Last words for you, Daniel, and how do people find you?
Absolutely. I loved recording this, and I love that hidden connection, in all these areas of the mind and everything else. And people, the best place to find me, no matter what, is naturalseizurecontrol.com, where there's a link to a masterclass video where you learn more about how I actually help people stop seizures, and join a Facebook group so you can stay updated, join the newsletter, etc. So naturalseizurecontrol.com is where they can find me. And that's my closing remark.
And remember this, as a doctor and been in practice for a very, very long time, meeting Daniel for the first time, believe in his absolute integrity and has started referring patients to him. And that's where it ends with me, as far as finding out how it works, how it doesn't. But it is a matter of, yeah, I trust this guy and I'm definitely referring to him. Kendra, a little bit about yourself, last words and last comments.
Oh, there's so many words. I have to only choose one last word.
Well, you can have, I mean, come on.
Yes. I really appreciate what you're doing here. And I'm going to admit that when I heard you were a plastic surgeon doing a health podcast, I thought, really, Daniel, is this what's happening? Total prejudgment of, not knowing how I would fit in with this. And having done a little homework and then having this conversation, it's so refreshing to know that it can feel like such an uphill battle, especially when I reference the client of mine that was on 8 medications. And I tried to nudge her in a direction, but we come, people come with decades of belief and indoctrination into how they're going to handle the things that come up with their health. And then, of course, even being brave enough or allowed to post certain things like on social media, right? That I have to really filter what is allowed. So having different platforms like this that you're creating is so refreshing and inspiring. And it feels like the army, you know, the army of white hats, if you want to call us or whatever, is growing and has this network that, you know, we can continue to point people to, saying it's not just us having these wild ideas, that thoughts control your reality and that you can heal from literally anything and everything. So, and to connect with me, I'm on just about every platform at Kendra Cannoy, and there's kendracannoy.com. Really focused and excited to continue serving all of those in joint pain, and especially those that have the athlete's mindset, which is intentional, because I know that typically the athlete has the focus, the trust, the commitment to do the hard changes of lifestyle, which is, it's a lot harder than taking a pill. But it's, you know, it's so empowering. I'd like to kind of reach through the screen and shake people's shoulders and be like, no, really, that, yeah, the knee pain will go away. And then all these other things are going to improve, and you're going to realize how much power you have as a human over your body's experience here. So,
And that is so true. And what I love about the kind of work that you guys do is you're holding people accountable. You're taking the time, you're giving them the support, you're navigating through their own fears, through their own confusion, and reminding them, yes, this is possible because I've done it before. I've been doing it for many years. I've seen this happen. Just trust me and make it all happen versus, you know, just relying on a drug. And once again, I'm not knocking drugs. I'm not knocking conventional medicine. What I am saying is that we have more options out there, but the real issue is that as individuals, we have to assume responsibility and accountability for our own choices and our own choice of having that information and looking outside when something's not working, and then recognizing that that one thing that triggers a lot of people, as I like to put it, is that we no longer have an excuse to be sick. And I couldn't say this 5 years ago, but I can say this now. Why? Because all that information is out there, the technology is out there, but most importantly, the guides, the amazing individuals like yourself, Kendra and Daniel, are out there to support. So let's wrap it up with this. I know we will be back with both of you sometime soon. And I am Dr. Bart Rademaker, and this is the Doctor's Guide podcast, raw and unfiltered, bringing to you the types of insights and action steps that you can personally take, because there is a way to navigate this, and the process is pretty much the same with everyone. As Kendra also put it, you know, it's a matter of taking time. It's a matter of commitment. And as Daniel also put it, you know, it's also that experience out there. So thank you so much, and we will be back.